Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we are embarking on a truly fascinating journey. We're going to look at something you probably pass by every single day, maybe even aggressively yank out of your lawn every spring, right? The incredibly stubborn common dandelion. But hey, we aren't just looking at it as a pesky yardweed. We're exploring its crazy journey from ancient folklore and traditional medicine right to the center of intense modern oncological study. I mean, how does an unassuming little plant end up under the microscopes of cancer researchers worldwide? Let's find out.
To really understand the deep curiosity surrounding this plant, we gotta look at the stories first. There's this historic anecdote drawn from the Budwig Protocol texts. It describes a man with a terminal diagnosis, literally stripped of all hope, who is told to simply take the root of the dandelion. And according to this account, less than 6 months later, doctors could find no cancer in his body at all. Zero. There's even another story in that exact same text about a bedridden man with lung cancer whose lesions completely vanished after taking dandelion root powder. Honestly, these are incredibly powerful, miraculous-sounding stories.
But of course, that brings us to the absolutely most important question we can ask. Does science actually support this? While we can totally acknowledge the immense emotional power of these survival stories, we need to sharply pivot to the rigorous goal of our explainer today. Our objective is to separate internet rumors and centuries-old folklore from hard, peer-reviewed laboratory reality. We really need to know what happens when scientists put this plant up against actual cancer cells in a highly controlled environment.
So let's start with section 1, inside the dandelion extract.
Okay, let's dive right into this. To understand how a literal weed could possibly fight disease, we have to strip away those yellow petals and look at it on a molecular level. And wow, the sheer complexity hiding inside is just staggering. According to a comprehensive clinical review by Dr. Paul Merrick, dandelion extract is essentially a microscopic pharmacy. It contains a massive array of bioactive compounds. We're talking about sesquiterpenoids, phenolic compounds, flavonoids, triterpenoids, the whole shebang. Now, I know those sound like a bunch of complicated botanical terms, but they are highly complex, physiologically active molecules. And in various national sources, they've been shown to have anti-inflammatory, antibacterial, and critically, potential anti-cancer properties.
Which brings us to section 2, mechanisms of cell death.
Right, so we know the dandelion is packed to the brim with these complex chemical ingredients, but what actually happens when you introduce them to human cancer cells in a lab? Well, the research points to these compounds acting almost like tiny, targeted saboteurs. But before we get to the specific studies, we need to define a really crucial term, apoptosis. If you read any oncological literature, you're going to see this word everywhere. Apoptosis is basically programmed cell death. Think of it like a cellular self-destruct button. You see, healthy cells have a natural life cycle. They die off and they're replaced. Cancer cells, though, they're essentially immortal. They just ignore the body's signals to die and keep multiplying out of control. So the ultimate goal of many cancer therapies is to force those malignant cells to undergo apoptosis, basically making them destroy themselves without harming the healthy tissue right next door.
And this brilliantly illustrates that cellular sabotage in action. A study by researchers Lee and colleagues looked at human esophageal cancer cells. They found that dandelion seed extract essentially dismantles the cancer cell's defenses step by step. First off, it inhibits the PI3K/ACT pathway. That's basically the communication route the cancer cell uses to stay alive and multiply. Next, it downregulates VEGF, which is a protein cancer uses to build new blood vessels so it can feed itself. Finally, with its survival signals blocked and its food supply totally choked off, the extract triggers proteins like caspase-9. This directly forces the esophageal cancer cell into that state of apoptosis, hitting that self-destruct button.
And the efficiency of this process in preclinical models is pretty staggering. A completely separate study by Ovaje and colleagues investigated the effects of dandelion root extract on colorectal cancer. Get this, after just 48 hours of treatment in the laboratory, the extract selectively induced programmed cell death in greater than 95% of the colon cancer cells. Over 95% in just 2 days. And the best part? It did all this while completely leaving the non-cancer cells alone.
So let's look at how this translates from a little plastic petri dish to a living organism. Ovaji's team didn't just stop at isolated cells. They confirmed the anti-cancer efficacy in vivo studies when they orally administered dandelion root extract to human colon xenograft models. And by the way, these are living models grafted with actual human tumors. They witnessed a tumor growth retardation of more than 90%. 90%. The extract actively stopped the tumors from expanding inside a living host.
Moving on to section 3, immune system reprogramming.
Because as it turns out, the direct destruction of cancer cells is only half the story here. Recent research is showing that these bioactive compounds don't just attack the tumor, they actually act as molecular hackers across different types of cancer, reprogramming the body's own immune system to step up and join the fight. For example, a study by Deng and colleagues focused on triple-negative breast cancer, which is a notoriously aggressive form. They found that dandelion extract inhibited the tumor by targeting what we call tumor-associated macrophages. Normally, tumors are sneaky. They trick these immune cells, called M2 macrophages, into acting as their personal security guards. But the dandelion extract actually repolarized them. It flipped them back into M1-type macrophages, which actively attack the tumor instead of protecting it. Meanwhile, you've got Zhu and team showing the extract suppresses gastric cancer by targeting specific genetic coding, and Wang's research proving it disrupts the core fatty acid metabolism of breast cancer cells.
Now, I want to ground us for a quick second in the actual source text. What you're seeing is genuine medical literature documenting these laboratory successes. These aren't just random fringe health blogs we're looking at. These are formally published, peer-reviewed studies detailing the efficacy of dandelion extract against colon, breast, esophageal, and gastric cancers, both in vitro and in vivo. The sheer volume of the cellular data is undeniably exciting, especially for researchers out there desperately looking for novel, non-toxic therapies.
But let's look at Section 4, the clinical trial reality.
However, as focused learners, we always have to step back and look at the entire scientific picture, right? We have to pivot from all that fascinating laboratory excitement to the much more restrained reality of modern clinical science. So the crucial point is captured right here in Dr. Merrick's review. Let's literally read this directly from the source. Despite the in vivo and in vitro data demonstrating the anti-cancer activity of dandelion extract, there are no clinical studies to support the use of this botanical. And guys, this is a sobering, undeniable fact. As of the compilation of this data, absolutely 0 human clinical trials have been completed that prove the dandelion can replicate its laboratory miracles inside an actual human cancer patient.
And this brings us face to face with what we call the efficacy gap. On one side of the gap, we have these thrilling preclinical results, right? 95% tumor suppression, complex immune system hacking, multi-pathway cell death, but on the exact opposite side, an absolute lack of clinical data. And you might be wondering why? Well, because a success in a controlled petri dish or even in a mouse model just does not automatically equal a cure in the vastly complex, messy ecosystem of the human body. We're talking about major hurdles here, like bioavailability. Basically, how much of that active compound actually survives your digestive system to reach the tumor. That, along with proper dosing and human safety profiles, well, they just remain completely unproven in formal trials.
Which leaves us with this final, somewhat provocative thought. We've seen today that the folklore of the dandelion isn't just magic or make-believe. It's actually rooted in highly complex, deeply fascinating cellular science. I mean, the bioactive compounds inside this common weed are genuinely potent enough to dismantle cancer cell defenses and reprogram immune responses in a lab. Yet the bridge to actual human clinical truth remains unbuilt. Will the medical community ever invest the massive resources required to test this humble little plant in human trials? Or will its immense potential remain locked forever inside the petri dish? It's a big question, and honestly, it challenges the very future of how we discover and test cancer therapies. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking questions and keep learning.